知らん方がいい。あれは悪魔だ。
Welcome back to Nico Robin Character Analysis for Water 7 Part 4. We're only about 18 chapters through this arc, so we still have quite a ways to go. So without further ado with this introduction, I think we'll just get right into everything immediately. We continue where we left off at the end of chapter 340. I appreciate the fact in this flashback it's not literally the exact panel it was taken from. It's a bit of added extra work on Oda's part, but it's very appreciated because this could have easily been a copy and paste panels from the last chapter. Her look here isn't really taken from any of the scenes from the previous chapter. I suppose this image here would be the closest one from that panel, but it's pretty much entirely different. These two lines Robin said are the main things that they focus on, as those were her biggest errors, as she said during Sanji and Chopper's conversation. And it happens in that order too, with things will only get worse from here on out, and after today, we'll never meet again. I just liked how it was in that order. Once again, it was Robin's biggest mistake of going to see the two, just in case she said something that will make them figure out what she intended to do next. But she wanted to give a proper goodbye to them and to scare them into not following her. Throughout these 5 pages, it's mainly Zoro, Nami, and Chopper are the main ones to really talk here. I love how they're all working together to try to figure this out. Once again, they ask Chopper, did Robin really say that? Because they are still in shock about hearing about all this. I don't really blame them, because it is unnaturally cold of her to do this, and she really wasn't ever like this during her time with the group. But it really hammers in this point a lot that they can't believe she said this. Zoro assumes, based on what Robin said, that she's intending to do something much worse later today. The city's already in uproar over the failed attempt on the mayor's life. If someone were to make this situation worse, there's only one way to do it. Nami chimes in, being on the same wavelength as Zoro, even finishing a sentence, more so his thought process pretty much, at this time, to actually kill the mayor. It's a detail that shows how they're thinking about the same exact thing, and are really coming together to think this all through. Just the two sharing the same opinion, or even finishing his thoughts, shows the level of friendship that she has with Zoro to anticipate what he was going to say next. Both of them are using their smarts to the fullest here. Even Zoro agrees with Nami's comment, saying that would be the natural thing to think. Now with all these discussions, some things are bound to not be fully true or right, which is only natural when you're trying to figure out Robin's intentions here. But Zoro saying that they know now she's trying to pin the crime on them means it may be a trap to lure them to the site. So in Zoro's opinion, that's what he's assuming Robin's trying to do. With the power of hindsight, we know that Robin truly didn't expect to see them in the mansion. She wasn't anticipating it. When she said that they'll never meet again, she did truly mean that. She did not want them to follow her, nor was that ever something she wanted them to do is enter that mansion. She was definitely honest in what she was saying there. Her intent was, in a way, to scare Sanji and Chopper and not going after her. Obviously that backfired as the crew deeply cares about her. She likely thought no matter how kind they are, they're just going to toss her aside like every other group that she's been a part of. But this group is very different. They will never do that to her. But Robin doesn't believe she's worth any bit of kindness or deserves any bit of love given to her, which the more we'll learn about her as it goes on, it makes it all the more tragic how she views herself like this. But this once again shows how she gravely underestimated what the Straw Hats are willing to go through for Robin's sake. Zoro thinking that this is a trap and that is Robin's intent to lure them in going to the mansion is just wrong. I don't blame him for thinking that, as it's a fair assumption to make given the information he's been told. But he is right about the risk if they go to the mansion and that they are spotted, as it'll make them easier to lay the crime on them. Nami asks a fair question that Zoro sounds like he's assuming Robin is the enemy, but he assures her he's only talking about possibilities, and he's not leaning either way. They won't be prepared if they start leaning one way and then the truth becomes another. I suppose to simplify this more, if they trust her currently, and then it turns out they can't anymore, then they won't be ready, and it'll make it harder to accept that reality. This panel is extremely interested in how it's positioned. Zoro begins to unsheath the sword after he says if we start leaning one way and the truth turns out to be the other, as we then see him pull the sword out a little bit, we won't be prepared. The way I took this is if it does turn out Robin is truly the enemy, and if she attacks them, he is prepared and ready to strike her down if he needs to. It's a subtle but brilliant way to showcase this with this panel. It does give me the notion that he's very uneasy about the situation in general, and he doesn't really know how to take Robin at this point, which is very understandable. I do believe Zoro when he tells Nami he's not leaning either way. Zoro is typically brutally honest in how he feels, so I doubt he would have any reason to lie to Nami here. They make the decision that if Robin is going to kill the mayor, they will do it tonight. Zoro questions to Luffy if they should go to the site, and Luffy says that we go. This is the first time up to this point that Luffy contributes to the conversation. He's adamant on going to the site despite the clear risk it'll be with the consequences of going. It's always important to bring up just how insanely dedicated he is to his crew and believing them to be innocent. He will just simply never abandon them. Which, unfortunately, Robin is just so used to that feeling that I really wish she knew just how much they care about her. But Luffy agreeing to go here up to this point in the conversation is interesting because they haven't even really fully finished discussing all the information they know yet. It is really great and wholesome to see Nami was also willing to go with Luffy in the same way without discussing all the details. She does bring up a really good point that hasn't been fully discussed yet, and it's something that's been bothering her. That's the fact Sanji says he saw Robin walking with someone. Iceberg said the same thing, someone who was wearing a mask. That wasn't one of them. That person might be behind the sudden change in Robin. This was an excellent thing to bring up since it hasn't been talked about to the group yet, and it's extremely important. In truth, Nami is 100% on the money here with this in hindsight. The masked person is definitely behind Robin acting so differently. Her saying the masked person isn't one of them is obviously true as well. I like the wording or the clear implication that the group constantly saying over and over again that they are in shock that Robin said all these things, and it makes it all the more clear that they are astonished by this because it is just an unnatural change for Robin to have. So this added line really helps communicate how confused they are by what she said there. I'm happy Nami mentions this line because it reinforces what they've been saying previously that they can't believe Robin said all this, and her saying that this is a sudden change for her. I appreciate Nami saying this because it does make it abundantly clear what they are referring to, and what is making them so upset is Robin's sudden change. The last thing to mention before we move on from all this is I do want to go in a little bit more detail of Nami mentioning about Sanji and Iceberg seeing Robin with this masked figure. Nami's comment specifically mentions that Sanji said he saw someone walking with Robin. I wondered, when did Sanji tell her this? There was never a panel of this shown, unless this was done all off panel in chapter 329 when Nami comes back to the ship. But if that was the case, Nami should have been more concerned. But when she's alone on the ship while the rest go to get Usopp, she does bring Robin up, only saying she hopes she comes back. The implication is that she just assumes she's still out shopping. Sanji, at least by that point, didn't tell her about the masked person following her yet. I feel it's possible Sanji didn't tell her yet just because he didn't want to make her worry. He also probably held out hope that Robin was okay and she'll be back soon. Based on that line, does give me the idea that he didn't want to worry the crew just yet. I wish it was just worded a little bit more clearer. It's hard to know who knows what at what point in time, and it confuses me. Maybe it is possible Sanji told her in chapter 329, and Nami held out hope too that she'll be back just in the same way Sanji did. But what she said there in that moment isn't really enough to go on that, at least for me. I may be reading too much into this, but maybe the most likely explanation is that Chopper told Nami about what Sanji said to him about Robin following this masked person. Now, Mayor Iceberg saying the same thing is a bit questionable. When Luffy met Iceberg, Iceberg never said anything about this second person that was with Robin. He never brings up a second person at all. The only thing I can assume is that maybe in the papers, Iceberg had some kind of quote that Robin and this masked figure did what they did to him. That's my only assumption because Nami specifically mentioning Mayor Iceberg saying this, it's a bit strange. So I'm going to go with that interpretation that Iceberg just said something about that in the papers. She should have brought up what Paulie said, because he's the one that specifically mentions that there was 2 assassins. There's really 3 ways to fix this panel, to make what Nami said have a little bit more sense to it. Because the thing Nami says are pretty much the things that we as the viewer know, but things that how is Nami supposed to know? The first thing is to clarify what Chopper said, and that Sanji saw Robin walking with someone. Clarifying that Chopper said this is referring back to what Sanji's told Chopper to tell the rest of the crew. The second one is clarifying Iceberg's statements that she heard this in the papers. That's a whole other tangent of when did she read the papers, but it's more or less assumed that maybe Zoro told her off panel, because he's the one that read the papers earlier. And the third one is just clarifying that Paulie also said the same thing too. I overall like Nami's optimism here. I do like the fact that she seems to be holding out the most hope amongst the rest of them, and she brings up a lot of good points. And to just quickly get this out of the way too, no, it's not Usopp as the masked figure, since after his battle with Luffy, he's remained on the Merry-Go ship the whole time. Sanji and Chopper can testify to this when they help him know about the tide coming. I know it feels dumb to mention, but I want to be thorough and get that out of the way. But it does make Sanji and Chopper seeing Robin the most fitting 2 people to encounter her, since even after the rest of the group are trying to forget about Usopp, those 2 still care about him to let him know about the storm coming. They are still considering him their friend, and being super thoughtful. They have always been overly kind and caring, which is one of the many reasons why I really love those 2. But back on topic. Chopper being overly excited on this being a possibility is fitting, and I really love how when that information is discussed, he's immediately thinking that to be the case. and he's being very positive that Robin is doing something bad because of this other person telling her to. I don't blame him for feeling like that at all. It does show he wants Robin to be innocent as much as possible, so it's very in character for him to feel like this. And it's just adorable too. But Zoro remains calm and says that that's the best case scenario, and explains worst case scenario is if Robin and the guy are comrades. Once again, he's staying very neutral on this whole situation, as what he was saying earlier, looking at both possibilities. I feel like his reply to Chopper is trying to keep everybody's expectations in check, and not get too carried away on feeling a certain way, which harkens back to what he said a few pages ago, which I feel like is the best way to look at this if this was like a real world situation. Though it also makes how Nami, Chopper, and Luffy feel about Robin at this point a very big risk in thinking she's innocent. Based on her dialogue, it appears to be that way in how they feel about her in this moment. Just in case she does turn out to be an enemy, they won't handle it. Which is a bit telling for what's to come later, cause for a moment, this does bite them. Now you mentioned the masked person could be anyone, which is very true. Remembering the fact that in this town they sell masks in a lot of places inside and outside of Water 7, like San Fondo, which is on another island in a sea train route that's holding a costume festival. It makes it even worse since they can't really identify someone's face. Especially more so the fact that enemies can just switch out masks multiple times, making it that much harder to track a person you want to acquire. It's really the perfect area to do a crime in if someone wanted to. I never mentioned in detail, but Robin off panel had a mask on, but then left the mask at Iceberg's room. But we never see her wearing it. It would have been a cool visual to see at least once. Their objective is to go and catch Robin. Luffy only says two things here, which is we go and to catch Robin. Very simple words, but he is listening to this whole conversation as we'll get into later. He's really the only one here that doesn't really contribute much in terms of discussing everything Chopper tells them, but he chimes in when it matters the absolute most when a crew member questions what do they do, when Zoro was asking if they should go to the site, and Nami's question on the objective. It's a great moment of leadership on his part, which goes back to when Zoro reminded him during his battle with Usopp. He's not faltering and really shining as their captain here. Luffy says they won't figure out anything until then, and Nami agreeing with him that sitting here and thinking is a waste of time. I think they both realize they discussed just about everything they could think of in this moment. Zoro begins to sweat a little, which is the first time we've seen him do this during this entire conversation. He explains the government's been trying to catch her for over 20 years and they still haven't. Obviously this is true. It is something well out of their range to capture her themselves given the government has tried and failed to do so. So if they don't take this opportunity now to go, they will truly never have the chance to see her again. It does really put them in a bind of going no matter the consequences, to find out if Robin is still their friend. Cause if they miss this chance, there's no way they'll ever get to her. If the government can't catch her with all its resources and being an organization with tens of thousands of people, then there's no way they can themselves. Nami basically says this herself when she mentions in order to know the truth, it's the only thing they can do, which is going to the mansion. Zoro brought up a really good point there and I'm glad that it was established. Because yeah, this really stacks the odds against them. One smaller detail I liked is how Luffy is the only one that isn't sweating throughout this entire sequence. From the start, he remains calm and collected and never has any bit of worry, fear, or concern in him. At least not enough to make him sweat. It's a subtle trait that really is worth bringing up to show how confident he is about Robin being innocent. At least that's how it looks to me. Nami and Chopper throughout all this are sweating the entire time. I can't say it's 100% consistent because in some faraway shots Nami isn't, but when it's more up close, Oda seems to remember to show Nami sweating. Those two are clearly the most concerned and the most anxious about all of this from the get-go. Zoro for the most part isn't sweating. He's generally pretty calm throughout most of this. He only begins to sweat when he thinks about the government hasn't been able to catch Robin and probably thinks to himself, how will they ever possibly get to her if they don't take this opportunity now, and the inevitable risk this will be if they go. But in the final panel, none of those three are no longer sweating. They all gain their confidence and aren't stressed about this anymore now. I just think that progression is really nice to show when they all come together to overcome anything. It's a nice detail shown through that panel. I really love those details and all the character traits when you really think about it. You may not have paid attention to it, but your brain did. All of them don't sweat or sweat in a unique way at a certain point in time. I know it sounds silly to discuss, but the intent on how each of them handled the stress of the situation is just really good levels of character acting and how it's drawn. After the intensity of the last chapter, just having the group decompress and analyze this situation and work together is great, since both the crew and the viewer need a moment to just chill and relax and take all this in. And this was all done through 5 pages. I love how they just talk about all of this and go through all the possibilities and come up with a plan. It's very effective, and a lot of progress was made in figuring out what to do next, as they all agreed to go to the mansion to get Robin. What's also nice about their discussion too, all of them come up with rational, logical things to discuss. Things that even honestly the viewer would pick up on, or think about. We cut away from the Straw Hats and we go to the Dock 1 shipbuilding factory, more specifically the evacuation center in a basement. We get a bunch of reactions by some civilians on things they've heard, which for the most part is just nonsense, but it is funny to bring up. And it'll be important for later. One says the Straw Hats are going to try again tonight and they'll be using the storm as a cover. Obviously that's not true at all. They are going tonight to the mansion, but they aren't using the storm as an excuse. We as a viewer know that. Another thing to really bring up is how the crew never mention about the storm that's coming. That is so far removed from their minds in that particular moment that I really appreciate that. Which definitely shows the interpersonal struggle amongst the crew outweighs a literal storm that endangers their lives. One assumes there's over 100 Straw Hat members because he has a 100 million bounty. It's a funny statement since I'm a numbers guy myself, so it does feel like something even I would think of if I was just some random civilian. He also says he heard someone say that the Straw Hats have 3,000 men, which again isn't true, but it's hilarious how off they are in their guesses. The only two things to get right is the Galileo workers are out in full force tonight guarding the headquarters, and the crew is going to the mansion. The second one is more of a wild guess that they actually turned out to be true, but they have no clue of their true intentions of going. But it's important to bring up of what the general public is saying here, since these outlandish claims are similar to a lot of ways that Robin had to deal with in her past. So showing these, I think Oda not only wants to show what the public thinks of the crew at this moment, but how the public can make someone out to be an evil, nasty person without knowing the full context. And it's definitely a case of making Robin out to be more terrible and awful than what she really is. It's almost sort of a case of don't always believe what you hear and do research yourself. It might be too meta or political of a statement, but mentioning this is important to showcase because the public can really make some silly claims or make things sound much worse than what it truly is. At the Galileo, we get many panels of people in front of the headquarters. There are so many people guarding this building, showing just how ready they are for something to happen, which they would be absolutely right in doing so, but who they think will be there is not the ones they expect. But it does show how much they love the mayor and in the process protect him like this, and that they're doing this all on their own accord without Iceberg telling them to do so. They are willingly putting their lives on the line for him, which adds even more to Iceberg and how much the people care for him. There's 5 people outside Iceberg's bedroom. Those are Polly, Kaku, Peeply, Lucci, and Tealstone. They say a lot of obvious things like the Straw Hats didn't enter the sea train, they are somewhere on the island, which is all true. Caulifla asks Iceberg why does he have a Nico Robin wanted poster in his room. He says does it bother her, and she says a little. He pauses and says it's better you don't know. That is a demon. This is the first real instance of Iceberg sharing his thoughts of Robin directly and clearly. We've seen throughout this arc that he has Robin's bounty poster in his room for some reason. It does appear to be motivation or a reminder of something, and a little bit of a case that he might be a bit obsessed with her. It'll be explained later, but for now it's very clear he doesn't like her. The fact he won't even elaborate to Caulifla the reason why he has that bounty poster in his room, it's very telling that the danger she possesses is so massive that it's better to just not even bring it up. It leaves it up to your imagination on the potential horrors Iceberg sees her doing, or what she's capable of. We'll understand why Iceberg fears her so much later. Him calling her a demon is once again the public persona of the nickname that the papers have given her for years, and it's being used in a negative way once again. Iceberg doesn't even see her as a human being in this moment. It's effective and chilling, and we'll know all about why he feels this way about her soon enough. It hurts having someone call Robin a demon when it's a name she truly doesn't deserve. It's one of those panels that hits a lot having read the story, knowing how ill-informed Iceberg is on Robin's character. But he's going off what the papers say about her, and the things that Thomas said to him about her. But because of all that, he thinks she's truly an evil person. But at this point, I don't really blame him for feeling this way, since in his eyes, she tried to kill him. So considering the circumstances, Iceberg probably has a right to be very afraid, angry, and have all the bad faith and feelings towards her. It's interesting too, Caulifla asks Iceberg this. It's a very human moment for her. Since she's also part of CP9, this doesn't really relate to her mission at all asking this. It does come across as a genuine question. It's possible she may think he may know more about Robin than he lets on, which in a sense would be correct. But it's possible she may think even he's a bit obsessed with her. Maybe a bit too much that makes her a bit concerned. I don't know, just a theory. We see the crew are nearby the mansion on some tree branches, as they intend to wait until after the commotion starts. If they start first, they'll take advantage of it. We see a shadowy heel clack on the surface, and we sure know whose heels those belong to. Chopper looks through his binoculars and see everyone has weapons and they look tough, showing how big the situation is. It's so bad in fact, Luffy won't even jump in without a plan as it could be bad. It's funny Luffy saying that since he barged in the mayor's office without a worry, but now even he doesn't want to do anything, seeing how many people are there. which makes this encounter in Enies lobby all the more funnier when there's over 10,000 people there. It is surprising even at this point Luffy's afraid to even jump in. Not only do they intend on staying up there the whole night, but none of them ever object to taking shifts. That's usually sort of a common thing in a stakeout like this, if there's multiple people involved in it, but it's important to bring up because none of them opt to sleep. That was never a consideration on their part. They do not want to sleep, and all of them are determined to catch Robin, and they are all equally willing to stay up for this. Now I know staying up all night isn't impossible, nor is it some wild feat, but I do really like the crew's determination here. It shows how they're going to absolutely not miss this chance, cause they ever so dearly want to know if Robin is still on their side. Once again, showing how much they care for her, which is always super nice and wholesome to see. Iceberg asks Polly to come to his room alone to talk about something important, but comes with great risk, and he's the only one that he could ask about this. And Polly accepts this, as he'll get right to it. He comes out of the room and tells the rest that Iceberg gave him an errand. This is important to set up for later, I promise. We get some ominous shots of a clock, Galila, and Water 7 as the waves begin to splash. Once again, this is a reminder that the storm is coming. As we see the clock, it says it's 9:30. This is important if you remember what Sanji said about the sea train times for that day. There was one in the afternoon, and then the last one leaves at 11. There's only an hour and a half left before the final train leaves, so there truly isn't a whole lot of time left. Robin intends to leave at 11. It's important to bring up too that the crew really don't know what Sanji's up to. Sanji only told Chopper he's going to look around, but he's not going to do anything rash. He never explained to Chopper where he was going. So Chopper, and therefore the extension of the crew, don't really know what he's up to. But I like how in all actuality, the crew doesn't really know what's going to go on and just are fully expecting to wait the whole night. That's the impression that the crew has up to this point. The last thing I want to bring up before we move on is just how ominous this entire setting feels like. With the clock ticking, there's just a level of anxiety just waiting for something to happen. Because you know something's going to occur at some point, but you just don't know when. In each panel, it just feels like it ramps up a little more and more on that anticipation. And I just overall really like that. Back with Polly, he goes to the president's office and peel back the carpet under the desk to find a built-in safe. He goes through the combination. We come back to the mysterious hill as a Den Mushi rings. It asks if everyone is ready. The man in the panda mask asks Robin if she's ready, and she says yes, anytime. They're going to create a distraction. The four of you will carry out your assignments as soon as you see the signal. I suppose it's funny to point out that the four they're referring to are the four CP9 members, and they aren't including Robin a part of this. Then there's an explosion, sending people flying, and multiple reaction shots of other people seeing this occur. The Panda Man says quite a flashy signal, as Robin says nothing. The Panda Man, who I'll refer to as that for the time being, but the words he says there indicates that CP9 never clearly explained what the signal was going to be. It's kinda like even he thought it was a bit much. At least that's the interpretation I got out of it. Robin being completely unfazed by this explosion, as the intentional silence speaks volumes. Cause if the Panda Man is surprised by how brash this signal is, a CP9 member who is used to being in these types of situations multiple times, then Robin should have reacted in some kind of way. I feel like this is another small clue of what her life was like. Given what she went through, this is nothing in comparison to the horror that she has experienced. The lack of emotion here really says a lot in how mundane this feels to her. It's just a lot of interesting things to consider with. Because Oda didn't have to put an intentional speech bubble here with no words in it unless we were meant to think about it in some kind of way. Even the crew is shocked how crazy the explosion is, so they certainly weren't expecting something that massive. The last thing to mention is Robin's new outfit. It's just really cool looking and makes her look like an enemy to me and a badass all rolled into one. The long robe with the hood is just a really nice design, and the mask around her eyes, as well as how the overall outfit really pops out with her dark dress she's wearing earlier. Which to me, her Enies Lobby outfit is my favorite in the pre-time skip era. That's why my avatar is wearing this outfit. I don't think I ever really talked much about her Enies Lobby outfit in general. I think it perfectly exemplifies the darkness and mystery she kinda has surrounding her up to this point in the story. It's such a great design and outfit. And hot too. With this new look, it does combine into a really great looking outfit for her. I wonder if they didn't have the time to get a full face mask like the others, so they just quickly threw this together for her and found a mask at the last second. The whole outfit does seem like sort of a rush job in a sense, but it still looks really awesome regardless. I do wonder if it's an intentional design by Oda by not giving her a big animal mask like the rest of them, just cause when she does interact with the crew later, it may be too silly looking for her in a serious moment. I'm not really sure because Oda does make these mask figures to be pretty intimidating and frightening. I really doubt they offered her a mask and she just declined it, but seeing how dedicated she is and not breaking their promise with them, if there was ever a situation where they told her to put an animal mask on, she would have done so without a problem. I doubt this event ever occurred though. The likely case is that they just didn't bother to get her one and just used what they had already nearby. Robin's always been portrayed as a very serious character up to this point, so I think having an outfit that reflects that is a great idea. Anyways, that's my tangent with her outfit here. Let's get back to the story. Cues don't immediately go off as they hear a person say they spotted someone in disguise. We see one of the masked figures as they are outrunning people and they can't catch this person. They use a vine whip to get to the roof as they are surrounded, but this person isn't worried in the least bit, saying to stand down if you want to live as they are no match for them. Robin and Panda Man are running as people chase the two. He asks her if she's memorized the layout of the mansion and she confirms she has. For Robin to know the exact layout of this mansion in under 2 days is impressive, and it's a great reminder of how smart she really is. This line would indicate that she has nearly a photographic memory of gathering information and remembering it, at least in some capacity. It's interesting that Panda Man asks her this given the scenes we get later. Chopper mentions how it's gotten pretty windy, and we see Luffy is gone as the group freaks out in a hilarious reaction. It's not really surprising or shocking Luffy jumped in immediately, but it is even funnier what happened to him later. We cut back to Paulie getting the blueprints as the masked figures spot him. They demand him to hand it over, and he doesn't know how valuable it is. This is where the chapter ends. And I think that's all we'll discuss for today. Clearly not as insane as the last video, but it's important to show the group's trust, and it's important to show every bit of detail with this, because the backbone of Robin's arc is trusting this crew, and seeing what the crew is doing, willing to do, and going through for her is so important to discuss and just show and explain. So yeah, I understand. It's worth to get into. So I'll see you all in the next video, and take care.